Thank you. Welcome. It gives me great joy. Hi, I'm Chandra. I'm the General Manager of Spacekeeper. It gives me great joy to welcome you all to the WASEC launch. The WA, Social Enterprise Council, which has probably been months in the making, years in creation. So it's really a great evening to see it all come together. First, some housekeeping, toilets around the corner that way, and if there's an emergency, follow the green men out the way to Sterling Gardens. That's where you gather an emergency. Can I please invite Kerry-Ann Winmar to do the Welcome to Country.
Kaya wanju nija, nunga buja, curling dabrakan, nija ubada wajak buja, kura, buja, bili durable yurigan, mamaput, nija gabrali mora, buja, wula mami nija, ubada wajak buja. First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this country, the Wajak people. And where this special area here is today, this is called the Boorloo, people of the Boorloo. And so the city has actually had a name before it was named Perth. And so we had a traditional name. So I acknowledge my people. I pay respects to my Noongar people because they give me my language, they give me my song, they give me my dance. We had a society here a long time ago before colonisation. You know, the First Nation people, or the Noongar people, have occupied this land for a very long time. They were the caretakers of this continent. And you know, for many hundreds of years. And Noongar people are spiritually and culturally connected to their natural environment. Noongar people have lived in their society. They had a society a long time before colonisation. And so some of their people would, you know, practice their traditions, their culture, their language, their song, their dance. They knew about their medicines. They knew about their bush tucker. And you know, they had a society. There was men's business, there was women's business, and then another time there was everybody's business. And so, you know, Aboriginal people, or Noongar people, congregated together. Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia were the first explorers, were the first navigators, were the first engineers, were the first farmers, were the first botanists, were the first scientists, we're the first diplomats, we're the first astronomers, and we're the first artists on the country. And why I say artists leaves a record. You know, as business people, we have a paper trail, you know, that we have to keep account of everything and do the end of the year reports. But Noongar people, they actually did their recordings on artwork. It wasn't about the writings in the sand and it would disappear. It was embedded into our minds. As a young child, we were taught from a very young age our song, our dance, and you know, our old people give that to us. It's in our spirit. And so it's very important to us because we carry that information from one generation to the next. You know, we have visitors here in this part of Australia, and all over Australia. You know, the Chinese have come, and then the Dutch had come in the 1600s, the French had come in the 1700s, and the British had come in the 1800s. And so they saw that Noongar people had a society. The Noongar people lived in their natural environment. We had a king here that represented the Boorloo people. His name was Lidjiguru. He had a son, and his son was named Yagan, so you know of Yagan Square, especially there at that place there where that train station is. One time ago, that was a special place to my Noongar people because it was a lake. And then in the 1800s, it was named Kingsford Lake. And so that lake was actually drained out into the river so they can build our beautiful train station there. So Noongar people walked and lived around their land. They had a society, they knew what to do, they lived off their natural environment, and it was so very easy. You know, they had bush tucker, they had bush medicine, and you know, this river, as you would know, and I don't know if many do know that, but it was a freshwater river one time ago. And so we have 3 rivers that actually operate here. We have the Burlong that comes from the Avon into the Bunnibaroo, just here, down here, and then it goes into the Derbil Yerrigan. And so these stories were passed down from my people. So they lived in a 6-season cycle, and they moved around their country in that 6-season cycle. So the 6 seasons, you know, we're in Duran now, so that represents April, May. So it's cooler weather now, so I can wear my yomba buka. You know, Noongar people was a tribe of a big nation down in the southwest of Western Australia. There are 14 different clans that make up the Noongar nation in the southwest of Western Australia. And each one is named for its specific areas from where it comes from. The Noongar nation extends from Wajak, Perth, then it goes up to Ewart in the north, and that is in Mora, and then to east to the Balladong in the wheat belt, and as far as Menang in Albany. And so there's 14 different clan groups that make up that big nation. And so, you know, in all of the mapping of Australian Aboriginal people and tribes, Noongar Nation has got one of the biggest in Australia. And so the Noongar Nation extends all around those areas. We could speak each other's language, yeah, we could understand it, but there was a slightly different dialect. And so Aboriginal people have always occupied the land, and they've always you know, moved around their environment. They had kings, they had queens, they had princes, and you know, my family lineage connects to Midjiguru, to Yagan, because my great-grandmother's mother was born up here at Katagara, in Katakumba we call it, so you would know that as King's Park. And so this is my connection to my country. It's so important to me. My great-grandmother, she was 108 when she died. And it was her mother that was born up here, but she always stated and said, I want to go back to that place where my grandmother, where my mother was born. That's important to us because that's our spiritual connection. And so I have the opportunity to work up there because, you know, the thing is that I have to continue to maintain and share my culture because it's so important, because Australia now is a multicultural country and we all have something to share. So I just want you to know that Noongar people still have song, they still have story, they still have art, they still have dance, and they still have that information because it was embedded into us. And so we continue to carry that story down from one generation to the next. So what I want to do is share something very special to you. I learned this before I went to school, before I could read or write. I went to school in 1964. How about that? So Kura Kura Nija Ba Warangani Muljal York. This is a sad story from long ago about Muljal York, the Christmas tree woman. Muljal York was a very beautiful Noongar woman with lovely long golden shiny hair. Her husband and her family loved her very much because she was so beautiful and kind. Muljal York always helped her family and all the people she cared about. Muljal York was always busy. She gathered food and cooked and cared for her family. Njordich Ba Mindich, Njordich Muljal York. Sadly, Muljal York became very ill and she was going to leave them. Njordich Ba Mindich Ba Lord. As she lay there, the people were crying and calling her name. Muljal York, she heard their sorrow. She called to them, I will come back and visit you again. Today, when the beautiful Muljal York spirit comes to visit, you will see the golden flowers of the Nutsia floribundra, the Christmas tree, the native Christmas tree, shining like golden rays of sunshine. When Noongar people see the Christmas tree flowers, they are very happy and have an overwhelming feeling of joy from the Muljal York spirit. But you know, Noongar people never break the flowers or the branches of the Christmas tree because they want the spirit of the Muljal York to visit them again. So I learnt that story before I even went to school, before I could even read or write. And so my old people told me this story. And so this is important to us, that our stories continues down to the next generation. So I say to our people here, ASEC, you know, welcome. This is a wonderful opportunity to have our enterprise and to work with Aboriginal people as well, because it's something that we have something to contribute for one another. So I say welcome again.
Thanks so much, Kerry-Ann. And Kerry-Ann is an entrepreneur in her own right, runs Noongar tours, other members of her family run other enterprises, so it's probably fitting that Kerry-Ann came and did the Welcome to Country. Thank you so much. I had a quote that Sven sent through to me earlier today, so I thought I'd read it out to you. It says, I think people tend to think of social enterprise as being as a type of structure, but a social enterprise is less about a type of organization and more a way of being in the world. It's less about are you being a social enterprise and more about are you doing social enterprise. And that was from Tom Dawkins, who's the founder of Start Some Good, who some of you might be familiar with. There's about 20,000 social enterprises, an estimate, but there's about 20,000 social enterprises in Australia, and about 200 of them are in WA. It's definitely a growing, evolving sector or industry, if you may. But before I say any more, I'd like to invite Patrick Gorman, the Member of Parliament, the federal member for Perth, who's a passionate advocate for social enterprise in the sector and helping it grow in WA. So would you please join me in welcoming Patrick?
Hi, my name is Patrick Gorman. It is an absolute delight to be with you this evening. Kerry-Ann, thank you for that beautiful welcome to your country. I'd like to acknowledge you and to pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and I think everyone here pays our respects collectively to elders past, present and emerging. Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute delight to be here. I think what you're building tonight and what you've started to build and what you'll continue to build is exactly what Western Australia needs. If you think about I'm going to talk a bit about the challenges that we face here, which we all know, but what I feel on a daily basis is that Western Australia needs to yell that little bit louder to have our voice heard in national policy debates, and what you're building tonight addresses that problem. We know that there is so much more opportunity here than we grab, and what you're building tonight allows you to put that case to the state government in a coordinated fashion. Because I know many people in this room have been trying to make that point to politicians at state, local, federal level for years and years, and doing it in a coordinated voice is the way to make that happen. And I think about one of the things that strikes me as a politician, you go to a lot of schools, you speak to a lot of high school groups, and one of the things that always strikes me is that there are so many, basically the question is boxed in amongst young people. It's, well, what do you want to go and study? Where do you want to go and work? And what you're building tonight is actually part of that pathway for the third option that we should encourage far more people of all ages and from all backgrounds to do, which is, what do you want to go and build? What is the purpose of the thing that you want to go do? And for many people, that is by building something that doesn't yet exist. And so the Social Enterprise Council here in WA will help people fill that void and help us grab some of the opportunities that we know exist in this state. I think Western Australia has an incredibly proud history when it comes to the old world of social enterprises. When it comes to mutuals, we've got the RSC, HBF, CBH. We've got organisations that have sort of bridged that gap between government problems and community solutions. We've got Perth City Farm here and Dismantle and others, and we've got organisations that I don't think they set out to dress prime ministers and opposition backbenchers, but Kira can manage to do both and make some huge social impacts along the way. So we have a really proud history in this space, but again, we know there's so much more potential. In researching for coming here tonight, I went and had a look, and there was the social enterprise and impact investing agreement that came out of the Rio Plus 20 summit in 2012. Now, that summit estimated that it would take about 10 years from that point for the global impact investing market to reach $1 trillion. It happened in 7 years. This is a really fast moving space. And if you think that the estimates are there's some $20 billion of impact investment capital here in Australia, we need to make sure that Western Australia is not just getting our share of that capital, but also adding to the pool, making people realise that this is a really smart place to invest your money in social enterprises and for-purpose organisations. So there is great potential there too. And I'll be honest, as a politician, I don't think we appreciate that potential as much as we should, nor do I think we understand it as well as we should. And I think that everyone in this room has a job in communicating to my colleagues about where that potential lies now and into the future. And hopefully again, in what you build, continue to build from tonight, you can do that. See, I'm a politician, right? So I wrote a proper speech, and then I was like, oh, of course, this is far too funky an organisation to have a lectern where you can look at your notes. So I've gone, okay, there's this 8-page thing, I've tried to turn it to 10 dot points. The other challenge that I think we have in Western Australia is the benefit and curse of an incredibly resource-rich and resource-dependent economy. If you look at the sensible people and what they say about the iron ore price in the medium to long term, and indeed this is where Treasury at a state and federal level start to forecast, it's not going to be at that $191 that it was today. That's very exciting and it's very good for a whole range of sectors in our state. It causes some social problems that some people in this room are trying to solve at the same time. But the long-term projection is that it might be, by 2030, $63 a tonne. Now that means that the economy that we know today isn't creating the jobs and massive wealth in a decade or 2 decades' time. So we need to say, well, what are we doing to grow the economy? I always say, you know, when the WA economy does well, the nation does well, and that has been true throughout history, but also that we need this economy to be more than ore. If it's just an iron ore based economy, we're not reaching our full potential. And I think that's the thing, that it's not about saying that is good or that is bad, it's just about saying, well, how do we push every individual to reach their full potential? And we know there's so much more we could do. The COVID pandemic, you can't escape the impacts that that's had in so many areas. The thing that always gets me is that we often talk about, oh, it's changed the small bits of the economy, or there's these challenges in terms of price pressures and things. But if you look at the big picture stuff, the Sustainable Development Goals and what the nations of the world got together and said at the United Nations in 2015, this is where we want human progress to be at by 2030. And that's things like achieving proper gender equality, making sure that every child has somewhere to go to school, making sure that we get vaccination rates for the things that we already have vaccines for up in developing countries. All of those goals that we set by 2030 are now 10 or more years behind schedule. That's a huge problem. That is a generation of people who are not going to reach their potential across the globe. And I say that because it reminds us again, there is a huge number of challenges and problems that social enterprises here in WA and across Australia can solve. Because we know if we find something good that works here, it'll probably work well somewhere else. And so there's that opportunity is big, but also the obligation on us to make sure that we do what we can is large as well. I was sort of thinking about the thing that I looked into a bit was around gender equality and how that's been impacted through COVID and in the social enterprise space. And one of the really interesting things was, many people in this room would know better than me, that the profitability of social enterprises that are led by women can be up to 25% more than other enterprises in similar spaces. At the same time, social enterprises that are led by women were more likely to fail or to find difficulties in maintaining their financing during the COVID pandemic. And I think that's a really concerning thing. We know that many social enterprises fell through the gaps of some of the traditional support payments that were created through COVID, some of the job maker payments and other things. And that meant that some organisations didn't fulfil their potential. And then I started thinking, and it's as you do, that we also have a huge problem in terms of the place I work, the Parliament of Australia. No Australian has missed the fact that we have a huge gender equality problem in the federal parliament right now. And one of the things, when if you're a real nerd, I'll give the WASEC the full written text of my speech, and that sort of talks about how I think we can use the benefits of social enterprise to help us with some of those challenges that we face in the federal parliament. The Kate Jenkins review into parliamentary culture is trying to look at how do we fix that. And the reality is, I don't think politicians and the public sector as it currently stands has the capacity to do that. So we need to look outside. We need to actually go and say, we know we have the problem, we don't know the solution. And sometimes it's really hard in politics to say you don't know the solution, but it's the only way you get things fixed. And I think this is one area where there might be someone in this room helps us with the mechanisms, processes that help us change the culture of a building that every Australian needs to operate well. So I'll just put that out there as a little marker of something that people might want to have a think about over time. On the more positive side, I do feel a bit of a kindred spirit with those in the social enterprise space. Before I was a federal member of parliament, I was the secretary of the WA Labor Party. Now, that is a machine party operator job. You are trying to get people elected, you're trying to make sure that a party organisation works, but you're also running this 120-year-old organisation that existed before Federation that people have in their hearts. They care about it more than they care about sometimes their job or other community groups, because it is so intrinsically values driven. And that values driven organisation, which in that sense is structured to say, well, on my side of politics, it's those values of fairness, equality and opportunity. How do you turn that into action? Well, we do it through a parliamentary process, try and get people elected. But I do sense that there is that, if you look at those people, whether you're talking to them in politics, whenever you're out doing your advocacy work, if you're talking to people in politics, just remember they actually are not, they're from organisations that are not that dissimilar to the sorts of organisations that you work with and you run, because they're from values-based organisations too. They could be values-based that drive people to do some pretty brutal things in the public policy space, but they are values-based organisations. And there's also a bit of entrepreneurship when it comes to politics. They talk about the Hillary Clinton for America campaign in 2016. Hillary becomes the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party in June 2016. By November 2016, she's lost the election to Donald Trump. In the 6 months, she had raised and spent $1 billion on her campaign, built from nothing to the biggest spending campaign in history, back to nothing. And so while sometimes you look at government and think, oh, they're very slow moving, things don't go as quickly as we'd like, there's also capacity to do a lot in a very short period of time. I guess the other part of that story is to note that in elections you're sort of choosing between two startups, and in that case I think the United States probably chose to back the wrong startup, but they've recorrected their course. The final thing I want to say is just that I think we're seeing in Australian politics a huge return to where we were in the post-World War II era in terms of how you see government procurement. I know government procurement is one of the things where we can do so much more, and it's one of the things you're going to focus on. If you look at how we looked at procurement under the Chifley government in the post-World War era, you were looking at building an Australian car manufacturing industry, not because we needed a car. We weren't doing it because we needed cars. Australia could have got cars from all over the place. We were doing it because we needed a manufacturing industry that was essential to our economic growth and for people to be able to afford their own houses. If you look at the building of the Snowy Hydro scheme, again, that was about investing in the science and engineering capacity of our country. It wasn't just about building a power generation source. And again, as we now look at where defence procurement is trending again in Australia, it is back to looking at how do you use defence procurement for social impact. And there's a lot of debates in that space about what we should and shouldn't be buying, but it's actually interesting that the biggest procurement piece that the federal government does, that is our defence procurement, is now again looking at the social impacts of what they do. There are other areas. I was out at Bellevue today, where we're going to once again make trains here in Australia, in Western Australia. And that's again, it does turn out to be cheaper. The trains that some of us would catch on a regular basis, Each car costs about $4 million. Making them here in WA now costs about $3 million a car. So 25% saving. But the benefits that come through are so much more because you enhance the manufacturing capacity of this state. You enhance the ability of people to feel buy-in around actually the value of our public transport network, and you have a direct economic benefit from the procurement that you do. So I give you that example because I know many of you will be looking to knock on the door of ministers and say, well, if you were to be buying from social enterprises here in WA, you would have benefits. There are examples of that happening in major procurements in government right now. I'll finish by saying I really do wish you well in this enterprise of encouraging other enterprises and making your voice heard to government. It is hard. You're competing against everyone else. Government's got more problems on its plate than it's ever had. And there are more ideas to solve them than there have ever been. But it's really important that we look at the structures and the purpose of the organisations that government's seeking to partner with. I wish you all the best in this endeavour going forward. You are more than welcome to reach out to me, be it through snail mail, email, Instagram, Twitter direct message or whatever, if I can give you any advice on how you might be able to put your case to government on the sorts of projects that you're trying to build, because ultimately everyone in this room is somehow trying to build a fairer, kinder, more and stronger economy here in WA. I'll say thank you again for having me and congratulations.
Thanks, Patrick. Just want to get off the seat. Thanks, Patrick. It's interesting that social enterprise is led by women was mentioned in that talk by Patrick. Can I invite Katie Liu and Vanessa Rowland, who are the co-chairs of WASEC, and they'll tell you a little bit about WASEC and also a little bit about the social enterprise that they run. So please welcome Katie and Vanessa.
Thanks, Chandra. I also wanted to be funky and cool and not speak with notes, but I'm just going to use the excuse that I've just had a baby 3 weeks ago, so my brain's a little fried. So I'm going to look at my notes. And I just also want to quickly say that I thought startup life and entrepreneurship was hard, but having a baby totally makes startup life a breeze. Thanks so much, Chandra, and for SpaceQ for hosting us tonight. I know that from Brodie and Chandra's perspective, social enterprise has been very important to them over the years as well, so it's wonderful to be able to have the launch here. Kerry-Ann, beautiful welcome to country. Thank you so much for that, and I also would like to thank you and acknowledge your people for being such fantastic stewards of our country and our land and the environment. That's the area that I guess I work in, and you've proven for 60,000 plus years of how to do that, and we clearly don't know how to do it in 200 years. I also wanted to say thank you, Patrick Gorman, for coming out, and it was very encouraging hearing everything you're saying. We obviously really need the support for the sector, so it's really wonderful to hear your support. And thank you everyone for making it here tonight and celebrating this launch with us. As Chandra said, my name is Vanessa, and I'm the co-chair of the board of WASEC along with Katie. And I'm also the founder of Climate Clever, and I'll talk a little bit about Climate Clever later as an example of a social enterprise. And then you'll hear a bit from our panel, the other board members a bit later as well. I won't speak for too long. I just wanted to briefly tell you about WASEC and what we represent, which is hopefully many of you here tonight. So we officially launched last year after a lot of prior legwork from the wonderful Sven and Kylie from Impact Seed, who I'm sure many of you know. We exist to represent and campaign for the social enterprise sector in WA. And for those that social enterprise is a new term, we represent a really broad group of stakeholders whose mission and purpose goes beyond just the need to make profit, and whose mission really is to create impact in a financially sustainable way. Our current definition on our website of a social enterprise is a business that exists to deliver measurable social, cultural or environmental impact. It derives most of its revenue from trading and reinvests a significant proportion of its profit in furthering its mission. So social enterprises can take many different legal structures. They can be not-for-profit or for-profit, or as many of us like to say, profit for purpose, or even other structures as well. And we'll give you some examples shortly. What social enterprises are not are generally like charities that are relying on continuous grants to survive, or large profit extracting businesses. The social, as Chandra said, the social enterprise sector nationally has been growing significantly, which has been great, particularly in other states where they've probably had a little bit more government support over the years, and that's what we're really hoping to drive here in WA as well. We are part of the national body as well, which is called ASENA, which is Alliance of Social Enterprises of Networks Australia. Thanks, Pat. So among various things that we intend to provide to the sector is certification. This is likely to be done in collaboration with the national body, which is really useful for those social enterprises like myself that provide services nationally. Certification can help to promote social procurement, which is really big in many of the other states, as it helps to ensure credibility of our social enterprises. And I'm not sure about any of you out there who have social enterprises, but I do find myself constantly having to explain or justify what we are and how we differ from a standard profit business. There are a lot of other things we intend to provide as well. If you haven't already applied to be a member, you can do so on our website, and it's free, and we also ask you what you'd like us to deliver for you. So that would be really helpful for us as well, whether it's more networking events or professional development things. So please go on there and have a look and sign up. Now Sven's asked me to just briefly explain what our social enterprise is, just as an example of what one is, and then Katie can explain hers, which is very different from mine. So Climate Clever, my startup, is a scalable tech startup whose mission is to help address climate change by empowering communities through schools, households and businesses to reduce their carbon footprint. So our core purpose is very much addressing environmental impact. However, we also have a social arm to our business, which is called Bill Buddy, and we work with large not-for-profits to deliver another version of our Climate Clever app, Bill Buddy, to disadvantaged households and those experiencing financial hardship to help them lower their utility bills and save money. And then in addition to that, we also give 10% of any profit that we make back to disadvantaged communities. So that's built into our constitution and our shareholders agreement. So we have actually raised impact investment over the years several times, and it means that our shareholders have to agree to that. They have to understand that we are going to first give their profit away, and then they'll get their returns as well. So that's just an example of one sort of structure. But I'll pass over to Katie now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. I did not have a baby, so I have no excuse for my notes. I'm on the cusp of launching our social enterprise cafe baby, so hopefully I'll be excused somewhat. I think what we really want to touch on, just from my point of view, really is the importance of understanding the legal structures, or lack thereof, from a social enterprise point of view. Yes, we are a not-for-profit. My social enterprise is called the Underground Collaborative, and we exist to provide employment and training for people experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And we do that through our cafe, Grand & Co. So though we do have not-for-profit or charity status, that is really from a legal point of view. We do also have DGR status as well, which means we can provide tax deductible receipts to people who give us donations, but it really isn't how we generate revenue. Most of it, or if not all, comes from our social enterprise cafe. And I think that's really important to distinguish that we're not a charity. We don't rely on those grants and funds to remain sustainable. Really it is through our trade. And also noting that a not-for-profit is not a charity necessarily, and a not-for-profit is not necessarily a social enterprise as well. And so essentially we are an enterprise with a social impact. I did have that awesome quote that I was going to use from Tom Dawkins, so my little pitch will be, not pitch, a little bit will be very short. But really I just want to say that reflections on impact upon what we want to make, on who we want to impact and provide that benefit to, we should really build that mission into how we want to use that business model to create more impact. That's all I'm going to really talk about, because I feel like we have quite a meaty panel discussion that's going to be, with a lot more people with diverse backgrounds and business models. So I'm going to hand it over to Chandra. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Vanessa. Can I please ask the members of the panel, Amanda, Kathleen, Patrick, and Adam, If you close it to me, I might not ask you too many questions. That's all right. I might quickly introduce the panel, but then I might actually ask them to talk a little bit about, at least Kathleen and Amanda, talk about a little bit about your enterprises, your social enterprises. Both Kathleen and Amanda are also on the board of WASEC, and they run social enterprises. Kathleen's the CEO of Perth City Farm. Amanda is the CEO of Kerry-Ann, and also Managing Director of Kerry-Ann and the CEO of Oracle. Adam, former partner at Jackson McDonald, but is a founding member of the Impact Investment WA Fund. And for those who haven't heard about the Impact Investment Fund, it's been around for a while, but Adam can probably give us a perspective of where it's at now. And obviously, Patrick, we've heard from Patrick before. Can I ask you, Kathleen and Amanda, to perhaps talk a little bit about your social enterprises so the people here get a sense of the different types of enterprises, because we've got social enterprises, not-for-profit, B Corps, charities. There's endless terms, but unfortunately within company structures within Australia, there's only a couple. So maybe talk a little bit about your enterprises.
Thank you, Chandra. Hello, everyone. So I'm the CEO at Perth City Farm, which is in East Perth. It's set up as a non-profit organisation. We're a charity, but we operate as a social enterprise. And I don't think we would exist if we couldn't operate as a social enterprise. So it changes a little each year, but most of our revenue comes from our trading activity. We run a number of enterprises from the site and enterprises that extend into the city. And then we get a little bit of money from grants to help us do special projects. But operating as a social enterprise is really the DNA of the organisation and has been pretty much from the start, because it was the only real viable option when it started.
Okay, I'm Amanda Healy, of course. I've got two businesses, but first I'd like to acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people and my lovely auntie Kerry-Ann here, who does a beautiful welcome to country every time. And I love it. And also Patrick, sitting right beside me, who's not only inspirational but very stylish with his tie. If you don't mind me. Okay, just wait. I'll give you the website. So I have two businesses. I'm an Aboriginal woman. My people are I'm from the Wanneroo people. I'm from the Koori Nation in New South Wales, but we grew up here in Western Australia, avoiding the impact of government protection at the time. So I sort of very strongly associate with Noongar mob and Yamaji people here. My two businesses, one is in the mining sector, and I always say to Sven and my poor mates at WASEC that when I'm banging on about business, that Aboriginal business by its very nature is a social enterprise. And I'm sure they're sick and tired of hearing that, but the importance of the work that we're doing as new Aboriginal businesses cannot be underestimated. So that business, I only have for-profit businesses. The Oracle business does mechanical services in the mining sector. We employ Aboriginal youth and, generally speaking, Aboriginal kids coming out of prison and put them into roles in the mining sector and give them some, stability and consistency in their lives. So we've currently got some 80-odd kids that we work with, and all of them have had some history with the law in Western Australia. So in lots of ways, that's a really important business for me to be in, and I feel really strongly about the work that we do. But secondly, my other business is called Kerry-Ann, and Kerry-Ann is a word that comes from my people that means your Sunday best clothes. I started operating that in 2014, and I digitally print gorgeous Aboriginal art onto onto luxury fabrics and turn them into ties. Would you like to get up and model for us, please, Pat? And but the purpose of that business is to get some money back to the artists in communities that typically don't. And I'm sure, by all the nodding heads here, I'm sure you already know that the money that's made on Aboriginal art doesn't go back to Aboriginal artists. So for me, it's trying to find a way to do that, for one, but also to change the broader perception of our culture. We have far too long been associated with $4.99 boomerangs made in bloody Indonesia. Not that there's anything wrong with Indonesia, by the way, but I'm just saying that, that belongs here. That's our stuff. We should be doing it. So it's really more for me about making sure that people understand that we're not cheap products. We are high quality. There's depth and beauty in our culture. And have I gone on long enough, Chandra, do you think? Yeah, you're getting the picture?
You go well.
Sorry, but that's my story, so thank you for putting up with me.
Thanks, Amanda. Adam, tell us a little bit about the WA Impact Investment Fund.
Sure, thanks very much. And just a little bit for those who don't know me, I've spent the last 25, 30 years as a lawyer of one of the largest law firms here in Perth, and I had the privilege of building a for-profit, for-purpose law practice inside a large law firm before that was a term. And a couple of years ago, I looked around at what I was doing, and I realised what I was doing, and I decided that I'd sort of done enough of the billable hour work, having proved you can make money and do good at the same time in any enterprise. I thought it was time to step away and devote more time and energy into that. I've had a really interesting career. Half of it's been dedicated to traditional owners around Australia, particularly Western Australia, and I've worked very closely with traditional owners in every corner of WA in relation to their native title rights and interests, and in relation to the governance, trusts and businesses and corporations that they operate. It's a very, very important area, and as a nation we all need to stop telling and start listening, and allow ourselves to be led by our traditional owners as on their journey of economic recovery as they join the system that they've been shut out of for so long. So that's my little pitch about that sort of work. The rest of my practice is, 200 years, exactly. The other part of my practice, I'm a commercial lawyer with a strong tax background, which meant that I know a lot about trusts, not-for-profits, philanthropy, PAFs, pubs, you name them, I've done them, I've set them up, I've been involved in them. It's a wonderful skill to have. And along that journey, I found myself working with private families and private businesses in Western Australia, and just like the rest of my practice, all of those families were families who had values at the core of what they were doing, and were looking for impact in how they were moving, and that's a wonderful space to operate in. And so I now spend more of my time with them as they help to bring impact into the community. We are all born with gifts. They are different. They're not all money. Some of us are blessed with that, others of us are blessed with other things. Our obligation on this planet is to share those gifts with others, and that's sort of what we're all about. I'm part of the Alliance, so if you think of this sector as two sides of a coin, on the one side we need social enterprises, we need businesses who are doing good while doing business, and they need financial capital to grow, because that's the way that the Western system works. On the other side, we need the investment, we need the capital that understands that it is not financial capital and profit that comes first, it comes alongside the other impacts and the other outcomes that we want from our businesses. And that pool of impact capital is growing, and it's growing rapidly around the world. Many of you in this room have been part of the journey already, but finally the floodgates are opening. And so the role of the Impact Alliance is to create a forum, much like WASEC, to support those on the impact investment side of the ledger, to help to grow and steward that sector, to share knowledge of what impact actually means. And it's changed radically over the years. So 5 years ago, impact investment for a family office that was investing their assets across a group of assets, it was usually a very small amount, and it was often given to the next gen, and it was really something to go play, and we didn't really look at it. Now, that's changed. One of the very largest private equity fund in the world, BlackRock in the US, from the very, very top all the way through, everybody now understands that every investment makes an impact. Our choice is what impact we're going to have. So the Alliance is out there trying the best we can to shepherd and support and steward the investment capital into this space, and we hope to be meeting you in the middle as your social enterprises are growing into this space as well. And the last thing I might say, while I've got the microphone and being a lawyer, it's easy for me to talk. I might just say one thing is that my challenge from the investment space is that whilst there are other measures than financial profit is still a measure. And what's happened in the last 5 years, particularly after COVID, is that we've realised you can actually make good money. In fact, the odds are on you making better financial return from getting behind impact businesses than not. And now there's a race to switch sides. It's really interesting. And so when we look at impact investment, we're looking at impact investment from the very top of our economy to the very bottom. And so don't be frustrated in your journeys for raising capital for your projects if you're not getting the attention of all of the impact investment market, because everyone will be looking to transform our economy at every different level. I think that's enough for now.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam. I've got a dot point about how, this is from a PwC report that was developed in 2014, that every dollar invested in social enterprises creates $3.65 social impact. And this is 7-year-old report, so that number's definitely gone up. Can I ask you, Patrick, you mentioned the Chifley government's role in social procurement or in procurement, and how can the government, both at state and federal level, pull levers to enable to grow the sector of social enterprise?
You identified earlier that there's also the challenge of making sure that each of the states has enough investment in that sort of seed funding to incubate, to make sure that there is an environment, and that there's also an education of the broader community. I think when you talk about that, only 200 social enterprises in WA versus 20,000 nationally, I feel like that's just, there's an education piece that needs to be done there. That's where the solution is there. When it comes to dealing with government on the question of procurement, wherever possible, work within the systems that are there. The Oz tender system is clunky, but it is very transparent and it's very well established. So if you are looking at how you build your enterprise, look to build it so that it fits in with the existing systems. I know that's a hard thing to say because often people build and they find that those systems don't work. But if you do have the opportunity to work within the existing systems, then that's going to take away a major roadblock. You're not trying to build a business and change government policy at the same time. You're just trying to build that social enterprise or that for-purpose business. We do have in Western Australia what they call the market-led proposal system. So that is effectively the ability to go to government with an idea that says, well, here's something that will make you money, save you money, or more effectively service your constituency. So look within that option as well. But having said all of that, I do acknowledge that we need to change the way we've looked at procurement. And I think the lesson of COVID has taught us that it needs to also say, well, what is a secure supply chain? What is a supply chain that benefits the people who are, that is being taxpayers, what benefits them in terms of, not just what they spend and what they get, but the ongoing benefits that come from that spend. And that's a challenge I think, I hope the WA Social Enterprise Council will continue to help governments on that journey. Because I think we have restarted that journey in the recent times in terms of the sorts of procurements we're seeing from government. Another example that I'd say take encouragement from is you've seen from the state government and some trends from the federal government that where there are major infrastructure projects, to say, well, we want 10% of the people who are working on those projects to be apprentices. Now, that's not in the financial interests of the government when they're procuring those big infrastructure projects. It is in the national interest though, and that's why they do it, because they know that it means we have the skills for the next build. It means that you're investing in the future. You're actually investing in education while you're investing in building. So there are little green shoots within how government's looking at these things again, and I'd say take some encouragement from that.
Thanks, Patrick. Can I just go back to you, Adam, just on the WA government, and I know with WASEC and the Social Impact Fund, the Alliance have been advocating quite strongly with government. And the role of government as a catalytic funder, knowing that there's BAFs and there's other entities that are interested in investing in the sector, what role can government play?
Okay, thanks for that question. And I think it's twofold. I think the procurement question that Patrick spoke to is absolutely critical. And I've had the privilege to work within the Indigenous space, where we've had Indigenous procurement targets now for about 5 years, there or thereabouts, around the country, and it has had a step change effect on Aboriginal businesses. And I think we probably have more Aboriginal businesses today than we do social enterprise businesses. There's way more than 200. And a lot of that came about, was supported by the fact that there was guaranteed revenue streams. It was creating a space in the very competitive market to enable social enterprises to get a foothold. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the sooner that WA government can do that, the sooner we can grow our social enterprise space. And if we don't, we will miss out on the opportunity. There is a lot of investment, capital, impact capital, looking for a home, and it will go to those businesses that are operating strong and successfully. So we've got to get a hurry up. So that's one big change government could be making. And the other big change that government could be making is, if you are investing, if I'm your super fund manager investing your hard-earned superannuation fund monies, I should be investing some of that in the impact space. I should be doing that, because that's actually good for you as a super fund member, because it's going to grow, because we all know that that's the future, right? But also I can't take too much risk with that money, because I need to make sure that your money's there for when you retire. So naturally there's going to be investable investment capital, impact capital, for those more mature businesses, and to help them grow and expand. And the WA Impact Fund is a fund for that purpose, and I'll mention that in a minute. But somebody needs to come in and be prepared to support the businesses from the startup and the early growth stage, to help them to get to that point where they're past that financial risk model. And that's where a catalytic fund would really help. A catalytic fund is really a fund to help catalyse the space, knowing that it's highly likely that those funds may never be returned. Right? Somebody's got to be able to put that money forward, and I think it's the role of government. If we said to government, you know what, we want to go and drill some more holes to see if we can find some more stuff to dig up, they would throw the money at us. So it really is a policy driver. There's nothing wrong with capitalism. It's the rules we set for the capitalism to follow. The moment we say to the system of business and economic growth that you can do your economic growth within a framework that takes respect to the country and the people, then all of a sudden the system will take, just like we did with COVID, we all changed how we ran our businesses, and it wasn't a question, we just did it. And we did it because that was the right thing to do. So that's the other thing that government could really do, is to provide that funding support to help nurture the ecosystem, to provide the investable opportunities for the impact investment. And finally, again, while I got the mic, let me mention the WA Impact Fund. And so with the support of people like Impact Seed, 2 years ago there was the WA Impact Fund was established with a contribution from WA Super, which is now part of Aware Super. $20 million was put down as a seed to start a fund for impact investment in Western Australia, and it's the first place-based fund in Australia. So most funds will invest anywhere in Australia, anywhere in the world for that matter. This one is for Western Australia. There's $20 million there. COVID has meant that it hasn't yet been deployed. Those funds are going to be deployed, all of them in the next 12 months. So the next financial year, those funds will be made available into supporting the sector that will be looking for existing strong businesses that are looking for growth funding, or for existing non-impact businesses that are ready to make the transformation. And I think, and this is a personal view of mine, I think the challenge is so great for us as a society to create shared well-being on a healthy planet. Look up Imperative 21, go to their website, it's cool. Create shared well-being on a healthy planet. We've got to get going, and we can't start at the bottom and push our way through. We actually have to get in at all levels of our business society and make the changes now before it's too late, as a society and also as a planet. So we're going to do that. We're going to need all of you to not only do what you're doing with the startup work, but also to do what you're doing inside all the businesses, wherever they might be. So that's coming. So that's going to be available next year. We really hope that fund will be able to deliver at least $20 million a year over the next 5 years. So I'll shut up. Is that enough?
No, that's great. Thanks, Adam. Sure.
Thank you. I also wanted to say we're also asking on the state government for some funding to help us have a certification system in WA, so we have that set up, but then also some skills building and development work. So we can have things like incubators for social enterprise, and we're building up the skill base of people in WA, because social enterprise is different to business and charity. It is a unique skill set, and we don't have a lot of it in WA. We just have the people who've kind of been figuring it out. And we'd really like some support so that we can do that piece properly.
Thanks, Kathleen. I was going to go to you, actually. It was interesting about the impact of COVID. Obviously, it's impacted different sectors differently. And Patrick mentioned earlier that how social enterprises led by women had suffered more than other businesses. And here we have two social enterprises that were represented earlier, and here we've got two more women-led social enterprises. What's the impact of COVID been on your enterprises, Amanda and Kathleen? And where would you see government coming in and helping out?
Interesting. I didn't really tell you before what we do at City Farm other than we make money. But our work is really about supporting the community to connect and teaching them kinder ways of living. And kinder ways of living for us is about ways that are kinder for the environment, but also for ourselves and for other people. So it's a real dual focus on the community piece and the sustainability piece. And so we've got our different enterprises, and some of them were fine through COVID and some of them were really impacted. So our biggest surplus generating enterprise is our venue hire business, and that just shut down. And it was funny because it shut down. We couldn't hold events, but we still had heaps of work to do to reschedule all these events. And then we had all these events that we rescheduled again. So it's like we've had all the same expenses of running a venue hire enterprise in our site with limited and disrupted revenue. We were really lucky because JobKeeper, I've always really wanted the government to subsidise our wages, and then it happened, and it was so nice. I really like JobKeeper. And then Lottery West helped us out as well with some funding to cover the gap until we got back on our feet. So we were okay, but it really shook us and said to us, social enterprise is great for us, but perhaps we need to diversify a little bit from that, and we need greater diversity in the enterprises that we're running, so it's not a few hospitality things. And so it worked out okay for us. Very grateful that we're in WA, but it has taught us a lesson about our business into the future.
Thanks, Kathleen. Amanda?
Yeah, COVID's been really interesting, and it has taught us a lot, there's no doubt about that. Interestingly, I have the two ends of the spectrum in my two businesses. So in the mining industry business, it's gone completely gangbusters. We work in iron ore, literally cannot get enough people to work for us at the moment, which is awesome. We're, as I said, we're taking kids that have been at risk or troubled and putting them through programs and training them. So that's given us a fantastic opportunity to do a lot more of that than we ever thought we would be able to do in a much shorter space than we ever thought we could. Who would have thought? On the other end of the spectrum, Kerry-Ann, www.kerry-ann.com, is in the retail space. And so, of course, that's been absolutely battered. And it had been, 2019 was not a great year. 2020 was horrendous. We're just starting to see, I was just saying to a couple of people earlier that I've got one of the shops is out at the Qantas Terminal T4 at the airport, and just in the last couple of weeks, it's been sort of, you didn't know from one week to the next whether you were going to be able to pay the bills. Then the announcement of Air New Zealand flights. And it's like, whoa, everybody's got money in their pocket and they want to buy, fabulous Aboriginal goods. So it's amazing, just the last couple of weeks, the confidence, you can see the change in confidence in the community. It's palpable. So it's been a really interesting thing for me. Thank heavens for the engineering business, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to pay my bills, but thankfully I can. But I'm hoping that as a broader community we've learnt to be, and I mean this is the thin edge of the wedge here, isn't it? This is what we're doing. We're trying to kick the door open and say, come on, it's time for change. We need something different. Come on, governments, listen to us and see what's going on the ground. But it has given us all that little push a bit further to go, we really need to do better as a community and as a race, really.
Thanks, Amanda. Knowing that we're over time, I might get each of you to just 30 seconds on any final words to the crowd.
I guess the only thing from my point of view is absolutely awesome to see the turnout tonight, and we really, I think, for all of us on the WA Social Enterprise Council, really appreciate your support in coming today, and we'll look forward to your support when we go banging on the government's door to provide us with some support.
Thanks. And I'll echo that and say membership's really important. It won't be free forever. We've had debates about supporting social enterprise and giving free membership, so don't expect that forever. But up until June you can get free membership. Please put your name on there. It shows that we've got people behind this and that it's important to the community. And we'll work really hard in the next year to start getting things happening, events, whatever you tell us you want, and hopefully we have some progress with the government and we can deliver more. But thanks for coming.
Getting government to change policy is hard, but people do it every day. So as you get together, find what those things are that you collectively want, you will have success. Look for things where you can find easy wins first, things that governments will find it really hard to say no to. Get them to do that, then go back with the next ask. Say, we've delivered this thing, it was successful, now we want you to help us do this. And if you do that over a couple of years, you're going to have huge success and you will genuinely change the operating environment, not just for those of you who are in social enterprise today, but for those who choose that path in the future.
Cool. I think I'll close by saying that it's such an important forum, and that we can't do this together. The task is too big, and we all need to be working together. There's no right or wrong. We're all learning as we go. We don't have to compete. We can collaborate. And that's one sort of message I'd like to close with. The other message I'd like to close with is, I forgot what that message was. It was really good too. I know what it was going to be. Yes. The other suggestion is just think about embedding your values into your core documents. Whatever your structure is, doesn't really matter. Like, don't get caught up with different we love to categorise things, especially lawyers. You've got to put everything in a box. Don't worry about it. As someone who looks at opportunities, I can tell you, I don't care what the document is, but I want to see your mission at the core of what you do, and I want to see that there's a balance of an understanding of what it is that you're trying to deliver. Not that you're a business that's trying to come up with a social impact. It should be obvious. I always call it the Durfred test. Like Durfred, of course that's an impact business. It should feel like that when you look at the document, when you look at the people, when you look at what's being done, that at the heart of it, it's about mission. And yes, it's okay to make a profit, but that's not all. We also look at what we're doing. It's not just about creating jobs, but look at the quality of the jobs that we're creating. Look how many employees are invested in our business. Look at the benefits to the economy, to the climate, and to the environment. Those things should be obvious. They should jump off the page, so to speak. That's my message. Don't get too hung up on what the page looks like.
Thanks, Adam. I'll leave you with a couple of things. The Impact Investment Fund, $20 million to be snapped up in the next 12 months. So definitely keep your eyes open for that. And in late 2020, the Queensland government announced $8 million to boost social enterprise capacity. And so if any of you are talking to members of the WA state government, that's definitely something that's a number we should present. It's a number, Queensland numbers are great for us in the startup ecosystem as well. We keep putting, here's $600 million that Queensland's invested. What are you doing? So yes, if you're speaking to anyone in the WA government, that's definitely a number you should mention. Please join me in thanking Kathleen, Amanda, Patrick, and Adam. Thank you so much.